Then it hit me. Curse Clash was another one of those. Bandai Namco keep making. This was Jujutsu Kaisen. And not just that, they were repeating the same mistake they made 10 years ago that cost them hundreds of thousands of... So I've been catching up on some anime recently, which made me remember something. I really like anime. I've caught up with Dungeon Meshi, finished Free Rent, and Jujutsu Kaisen. And coming from my previous video about Naruto Storm, I had a pretty strong urge to relive the days of watching an anime and then jumping into a tie-in game to keep that weeb high going strong. But considering there haven't been any games for the first two, that only left Jujutsu. And with it being the ridiculously popular shonen series that it is, I was sure that at least one console game had been released to cash in on that success. Because, you know... Then I remembered they released Jujutsu Kaisen Curse Clash right at the start of 2024, and when I checked out some screenshots and gameplay, I thought it looked like fun. So I ended up getting caught in Shueisha and Bandai's domain expansion, Emptied Wallet of the Crying Weeb. I even bought the stupid gamer chair for God's sake. And yeah, even though it's an arena fighter, which can be a mixed bag, and launched without Season 2 content despite coming out after it finished airing, it can't be that bad, right? Oh. Well, I'm an open-minded guy, so maybe I can find some positive qualities to the game if I just try it for myself. Developed by Viking, Jujutsu Kaisen Curse Clash was the series' debut on consoles, but as far as first impressions go, it didn't make a good one. The game received mixed reviews, with the most common complaints coming down to its poor presentation, a lack of features, and shallow gameplay. And at least for the presentation side of things, that point is pretty obvious as soon as you boot up the game. The low budget of the production can be felt as soon as you hit the start screen and lingers throughout the entire experience like a curse slowly squeezing the life out of you. I mean, the main menu was memed on for looking like a DVD from 2005 for a reason. Yeah, I can see it. And unfortunately, the story mode wasn't spared either. It uses anime stills for most of its playtime with a few rendered cutscenes sprinkled in. And it's a shame because the cutscenes that did make it look pretty good until you hit the credits screen, that is, where it just kind of stops. But credit where it's deserved, you do fight various cursed spirits with different movesets and designs throughout the story, which is a good way to mix things up. No over-relying on fighting your own characters, but recolored here. There's even a relationship system that grants you bonuses like cosmetics as you team up with different characters and raise their affection levels. And then there's Free Battle, which just might have the worst character select screen I've ever seen. So the character select screen was updated when the DLC came out, and this next part was written before that. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this outdated bit, but you know what? Kudos to the devs for actually putting in the effort. Here, let me bring it up. Okay, here we go. So here's how it works. First, you select character settings, then you choose the makeup of the two competing teams, including participating characters, their costumes, and whether or not they'll be player controlled. Once you're ready, apply the settings and your chosen characters will just stand there, watching, judging. It's a far cry from the UI design of other anime fighting games, arena or otherwise, that come with bright visuals and animated characters that spring to life when you select them.
Perhaps I treated you too harshly.
And while people have complained about the character models, saying that they look bad or outdated, I think they're fine honestly, and can even look pretty good at times. But keep in mind this is coming from someone who used to play J-Star's Victory Versus on the PS Vita. It might be a low bar, but at least they get bonus points for having an art style that doesn't immediately offend my eyes like with Jump Force. But when it comes to the animation of the characters, well, that's more of a mixed bag. You have some attacks that showcase some pretty good animations, utilizing fun camera angles and flowing well with the pace of the battle, and then you get others which move with the speed and grace of a PowerPoint presentation. I'm sure that the inconsistency between animations added to the stiffness of the gameplay mentioned in a lot of negative reviews, and I can't say I blame them, I know I felt it too, but you have to admit that Viking nailed the cursed energy effect which looks straight from the anime. As for the music, it's alright. There are a few good tracks and it gets the job done. I especially like the one that plays during the Gojo vs Hanami cutscene. But the only nitpick I have is that the main menu song sounds kinda like a diet version of Kaikai Kitan, and paired with the bootleg DVD menu, it just makes the game feel cheaper. As for the content, Curse Clash comes with a few online modes, including a standard PvP where you and 3 other players play against each other, a co-op mode where you can take on waves of enemies with a partner, and a lobby to set up matches. Besides those, there are also offline features including the previously mentioned story mode, free battle, and cosmetics for the characters which actually look pretty good. I mean, schoolgirl outfit Mahito and Hanami. The costumes can then be found compiled in the gallery along with your play record, battle replays, and unlockables. And while I'm not sure how often people actually use this, it's at least nice to have. I should mention that if you got the Deluxe or Ultimate editions, the game also came with a Spaceball side game featuring characters from the Kyoto Exchange, which I found pretty amusing. It even has Miwa. Or at least I think that's Miwa. But it doesn't make up for the fact that the savior of the Shibuya incident isn't playable in the main game. At first glance, the offering here seems a little bare for the asking price of 90 Australian bucks or roughly 60 USD for just the base version, but it isn't too bad. That is, until you realize that because the game's online modes are emptier than Gojo's Unlimited Void, you essentially lose out on the 3 online options, leaving only story and free battle to play with consistently. And while you can do co-op by yourself, unfortunately this game doesn't have split screen, so I hope you don't have many friends because the bots are going to be the only ones playing with you, and I'm not talking about 2B. God, I wish I was talking about 2B. But even if the overall package is lacking, I don't think that the core gameplay is as bad as people make it out to be. I think it's actually pretty fun and has a lot of potential. I can definitely see myself throwing the game on every now and then, even if it's just to play with a CPU. The core gameplay is structured in a 2 vs 2 format, with the main goal being to defeat your opponents enough times to exhaust their stock of revives and win the match. Each character has about 6 extraction attacks that build your cursed energy but don't deal any HP damage, and another 2 or so curse attacks that do, with the amount dealt being relative to the level of your cursed energy. So you want to focus on landing combos using your normal attacks early in the match, and then use the progressively more powerful specials to get the win. If you're a fan of the Dissidia series, then this should be kind of familiar because the combat system here is pretty similar to the bravery mechanic in those games. And like with pretty much all arena fighters, characters can also perform an ultimate move once the right conditions have been met. In Curse Clash's case, once your cursed energy is high enough, it can play out in the form of a cinematic attack, which usually recreates members from the anime, or a domain expansion which changes the arena to benefit the user of the technique in various ways, like Gojo freezing his opponents for a few seconds or Mahito getting a damage buff. Another feature is the ability for players to knock enemies into the air for a chance to activate a team attack with your partner, encouraging team coordination. And depending on the setup of your team, you can even get special animations showing the two working together. But while this is a fun system, I feel that the length of some cinematics can break the flow of the battle, especially when the attack is repeatable and the only requirement to activate them is to land a follow-up attack after the enemy has been launched by you or your partner. In terms of stages, the arenas are of course based on locations from the show. They're decently sized with different shapes and levels of elevation, giving characters plenty of room to jump, sprint, and air dash around so long as they have enough stamina, making environmental awareness something to keep in mind. And while the combat options might seem limited, this is a team game first and foremost, meaning you and your partner essentially make up one unit. So it's important to back up your partner when fighting by covering for each other's weaknesses, otherwise you'll find yourself easily overwhelmed. This leads into something about the gameplay that I think deserves some praise. And that's how each character plays as you would expect them to, making them feel unique while also giving players the chance to experiment with team synergy to see what works best for them. For example, Yuji is strong up close, but doesn't have many ranged options, and while Nobara fights comfortably at a distance, she needs space to activate Hairpin or Resonance to deal significant damage. This makes him a pretty good match as Nobara's projectiles can cover Yuji as he rushes down the opponent, and in turn, Yuji can keep them off Nobara as she activates her abilities. Meanwhile, there are other characters with more specific quirks like Megumi who can use the 10 Shadows technique to pull enemies towards him, or Mahito's Idol Transfiguration that can deploy these flesh beings like Pikmin to rush down the opponent, letting them fight comfortably at a distance or up close. I had the most fun when I started playing with different combinations of characters to see how their unique abilities would work with each other, and it led to some moments that really makes you feel like Jujutsu Kaisen. It's great seeing Gojo's Hollow Purple mow down everything in front of him, Nobara blowing up an opponent from halfway across the map, and Sukuna just not giving a fuck. You can even use Toto's Boogie Woogie to swap places with players on both teams like in the anime, although you can't summon the power of Tall Idol Takeda-chan unfortunately. Regardless, the level of accuracy to the source material is something that I love when it comes to anime games, and brings me back to the days of Ultimate Ninja and Tenkaichi, where you could tell the devs were passionate about the series through the little details they added and...
At that moment, a memory was born in the YouTuber's brain. A memory of a game that never existed.
My brother had been studying abroad for 2 years, and he was coming home for the first time. This was around the time Naruto Storm 2 and Jujutsu 3 were being released. Normally, it would have been hard to choose which one I wanted, but this time, the choice was easy. My brother was coming home after all. He was the one who got me into Jujutsu Kaisen, and we used to stay up all night playing the games. so I wanted to surprise him with a new one when he came home. Those games never missed back then, did they, best friend? So even though Cursed Clash is a departure from the PS3 games that we all loved, I don't think the gameplay is as bad as people say. There is depth to be found here when working with your partner, so it isn't really fair to compare them when Cursed Clash is just trying to do something different. Wait, something different? Even though I say that, as I played through the story mode in Free Battle, I couldn't help but get an odd sense of deja vu. From the way the arenas were laid out, the feeling of the land and aerial combat with your partner, and even the character select screen, a single thought kept running through my head. I've seen this before. Was it because the developers also made My Hero 1's Justice? No, that wasn't it. Those games were focused on 1 vs 1, more like Storm or Tenkaichi. It was something else. And then it hit me. Cursed Clash was another one of those. It was another one of those games that Bandai Namco keep making to try and recapture the success of a series that has dominated Japanese arcades for decades. This was Jujutsu Kaisen Gundam Versus. And not just that, they were repeating the same mistake they made 10 years ago that cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars, except this time, they might be taking Jujutsu Kaisen down with them. Have you ever heard of Rise of Incarnates? It's a game so obscure I'm willing to bet that most of you haven't, despite it being released globally on Steam for free in July of 2015. It was the culmination of Bandai Namco's attempts to recapture the success of the Gundam Versus series in the West, and was one of their biggest failures, likely losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. The game was developed by Cursed Clash's very own King after they had found success in developing Square Enix's Gunslinger Stratos series, and was designed from the ground up to appeal to a Western audience. To further this end, extra care was given to ensure that the character designs exuded the same energy as other foreign characters designed by Japanese people like Bandit Keith from Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Guile from Street Fighter, I'm sure. Remember viewers, strive to become the foreigner that Japan believes you can be. The full release featured 14 playable characters with unique movesets, 5 stages based on real-world locations, and even a comic book miniseries. But despite it all, the game only lasted 3 months before being pulled from Steam and then finally having its servers shut down in December of 2015. But what does this have to do with Jujutsu Kaisen? Well, that comes down to the reason for why Rise of Incarnates and seemingly Cursed Clash was made the way they were. Gundam Versus' dominance over Japanese arcades throughout the years proved to not only Bandai, but companies like Square Enix, that Japan had a winning gameplay formula on their hands, and the idea of an untapped Western market was hard to ignore. But in their desperate attempts to reach this market, they vigorously applied the Versus gameplay to various properties that may have benefited from something different, in the process unintentionally sabotaging them, and Jujutsu Kaisen is simply the latest victim. J-Star's Victory Versus, Rise of Incarnates, Dissidia NT. It's believed by Gundam Versus series producer Ryuichiro Baba that while the gameplay works and is entertaining, that it's the Gundam brand itself that's holding the genre back, as it isn't seen as very popular outside of Asia. And while it is true that Gundam just isn't as big in the West, I don't believe that it's so much the brand that's holding the genre back, but rather it might be the opposite. These days there's too much competition in the West for the Versus style gameplay to really stand out no matter how it's packaged. Gundam Versus' growth in Japan came from a time when the arcade scene dominated the country, and online gaming didn't really exist, and that's just something that can't be replicated anymore in the West. And while the Versus games were localized to home consoles at the series' inception, Bandai ceased the effort for a number of years between the early 2000s and 2010s due to licensing issues, leading to them missing their best chance at getting a wider audience familiar with the gameplay and as a result, falling behind. Of course, that doesn't mean the series doesn't have any presence at all in the West. There is a dedicated fanbase for Gundam Versus and they even hold tournaments for it. But it's an uphill battle to reach the level of mainstream appeal that Bandai wants from it, leaving it a niche within a niche for the broader gaming community. So all of this led me to believe that while Versus is hugely popular in Japan, the lack of exposure to the, let's call it Versus arena genre in the West, meant that games of the same style would be unfairly compared to more well-known anime arena fighters like Tenkaichi or Storm. And when I checked some reviews for Cursed Clash, it was true. Naruto Storm, more so than Tenkaichi, was usually the go-to point of comparison for the gameplay in Cursed Clash instead of Gundam Versus, the series that it was trying to emulate. This false expectation of how the game should have played created a little bit of a disconnect, leading to some reviews seemingly at odds with each other. Some would say the gameplay was too shallow, while others say it was too complicated. It's like if someone played Elden Ring, but instead of comparing it to Dark Souls, they compared it to Devil May Cry, and then complained that the gameplay was too shallow because they couldn't jump cancel off Melania's boobs for an aerial combo. So what ended up happening was that all the confusion about the gameplay exacerbated the poor first impressions that players already had from the low budget look and feel of the game. And as much as I enjoy the combat, it's clear that Bandai Namco wanted to use the popularity of the Jujutsu Kaisen name in another attempt to push for a genre that has proven not to work in the West. It's especially damning when considering the versus arena genre relies heavily on having a large player base to succeed in the long term. So it wasn't a realistic expectation for Cursed Clash, the first Jujutsu game in this style, to pull it off, especially with it being a full price game. If Bandai Namco want to salvage this game, then the best thing to do would be to lower the price of entry and polish the presentation over time, to give new and returning players a reason to feel that their investment, whether it be time or money, was worth it. And while that's unlikely, they have approached Dragon Ball Breakers in a similar way. Again, they actually have been trying to improve the game in various ways, including presentations, so good on them. Ultimately, the push for a genre that has already proven to fail and the low-budget feel of Cursed Clash led to it stumbling and failing to recapture the success of the PS3 games, with the negative impressions garnered here likely to impact future games. It's an easy thing for me to say in a YouTube video, but with a brand as strong as JJK, I think an Arxis-developed 2D fighting game would have been the way to go. The characters and their abilities would be right at home with games like BlazBlue or Guilty Gear, and you can easily imagine a domain expansion working like an astral finish, a powerful instant kill move that can only be used under specific circumstances. But that's just wishful thinking. I want to thank everyone for 500 subs. It honestly happened faster than I thought it would, but if you guys are enjoying my weird videos, then that's great. And I'm looking forward to seeing how far we can go. I plan on releasing videos more frequently going forward, so hopefully monthly videos aren't the norm. But until then, take care.